Hey everyone, this is Greg Srisavasti with CinemAddicts. I am here with this wonderful actor, Jacqui Vene. Okay,
Yes.
so I actually looked on YouTube to how to properly pronounce your name, and
Oh,
I let other people do the missteps because I'm usually the one doing the missteps, so it's Vene. First off, I wanted to ask you about the surprise visit. The idea within the last 2 years that a lot of people, a lot of productions are being shot in the time of the pandemic. So for you going from I guess maybe Reno, Tahoe, or Las Vegas, Los Angeles, to going to where you're shooting in the middle of the pandemic, how much of a challenge just from the get-go was it for you to shoot? Where did you guys shoot? At Middlesbrough or something? Where did you guys
yes,
shoot? Anyway,
Middlesbrough, Virginia.
so can you just start off with just the challenge of doing that, just going across the U.S. and then also around that time?
Yes, it was kind of surprising that we were able to pull off what we did, I think, because it was kind of in the earlier stages of the pandemic, but the script calls for a very small cast, and a lot of it was shot outside, which was amazing on this huge, beautiful property in Middlesbrough, Virginia, when the leaves were turning yellow and orange, and there were all these vineyards. It's a beautiful part of the country that I totally recommend anyone to go and visit. But we had to stay super, super safe and take lots of tests. And there wasn't a lot of chatting indoors at all. Even outdoors, it was kind of just give everybody their space. And it was nice because I had time to, listen to my music and go into my own zone. So that was kind of the protocol.
You know, the movie is an indie film. That said, you're talking about being shooting in the property. What was it like to shoot amidst all that wide open space and that nature? And even though it's an indie, there's a lot of really interesting locations. You're really literally having to go from point A to point B throughout, especially through the third act of the narrative.
Yeah, there was a lot of running in this film. We did a lot of yeah, a lot of running pretty much. And it was magical. I love being outside. The weather was almost perfect. Sometimes a little cold, sometimes a little rainy, but it was a huge property with a river running through it and yeah, huge trees. I loved it. I could not have asked for a better location for myself.
I don't want just I don't want you to pat yourself on the back, but just as far as being an actor, the idea of seeing your name front and center when the front credits roll. I mean, obviously acting and filmmaking is a team sport,
Mhm.
team craft, but was that
Yes.
kind of a cool moment for you?
I actually haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I'm excited to. Um yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I don't really love seeing the stuff I do, especially when I have to do interviews and stuff. I'm a little bit more self-deprecating, I think, than necessary, so it's nice to I mean, I don't know. I'll probably get over that hopefully in my career, but I'm so grateful and so excited. It is a lovely feeling, even just talking about it. I don't know what it is, if it's my ego being like, yeah, or what, but something about the idea of being able to see myself on a big screen, someone can go buy a ticket and see it is really magical.
I was listening to some of your past interviews on YouTube and reading up on you a little bit, and you and I are sort of two sides of a different coin. I was raised in LA since 10, so if it doesn't have concrete or smog threatening my actual breathing, then I don't feel like a human being. Whereas you, whereas you growing up, I'm assuming Reno and the now Tahoe. Can you just talk about the flip of what's it like to not grow up in the city where smog isn't filling your lungs, and what is the joy of that? Because for me, anything that's living that's not human, I get scared of. So can you tell listeners about the flip side of that experience?
Oh, yeah, I love growing up in nature. It made me who I am today. My dad grew up as a veterinarian's assistant, and one of my sisters is now becoming a veterinarian, and we are just animal lovers. We had horses, we had a pony, we had pigs, we had cows, we had chickens, and all these were just our friends. We didn't eat them. We just took care of them and played with them, and we had lizards and frogs, and um, I was always outside, and all of us were. My mom would just be like, "Okay, be back before dark," and we'd be off running into the woods or the rolling hills, and the imagination that you can just explore with. We used to play Harry Potter. We'd make it up. We'd just break sticks off branches or witches and make potions out of mud. And I think that's honestly where my idea of storytelling really started to blossom, was just being able to play and explore. And nature's just a canvas for you to imagine.
Obviously, you're in your early 20s, I believe, right now, but you're talking about breaking sticks, Harry Potter. Is does acting does that keep you in touch with your, I guess, inner, not to be too therapeutic or therapy here, but does it keep you in touch with that inner child? Because children, it seems to have the best imagination. My 5-year-old niece is much more imaginative has much more imagination than I do at 50. So can you speak to that level? Does this craft help you get to that place?
Yeah, totally. I mean, um, as kids, or at least in my experience, kids, we like to dress up and we like to pretend, and acting is just not having to really grow up. You get to play pretend and you get to dress up. And I think it's the most magical thing in the world that I get to make it my career and be a kid in a lot of different ways. It doesn't mean there's not a lot of focus and energy and work and discipline that goes into it. It's not to say it's taken lightly, but it is so much play, and I do get to play as like a kid. So yeah.
There is some play in the surprise visit, but this is a different kind of play. Can you just talk about the character and immersing yourself in someone who's completely different than who you are? It's a completely different situation that any of us would ever want to be. How does one prepare for that? And what was that journey like for you, and just in the big picture of things?
Well, thank you for thinking it's not nothing like me. Yeah, she is a meth addict, and I was really excited to play someone that was so much different from me. And it's addiction is something that affects almost everybody I know in some way, shape, or form. Um, either we know somebody who knows somebody, or you yourself have struggled with it, or your mom or your dad or your brother. So many circumstances, especially in our culture today. And I really wanted to get in touch with that. I watched a lot of this YouTube series, documentary series called Soft White Underbelly, of this photographer, videographer guy who goes and interviews real life people who struggle with a lot of different things in life, a lot being addiction to hardcore drugs. So getting into that headspace, it's very dark and um emotional. I feel so deeply for people affected by it. It's a very you know dark path to go down, and there's a lot of compassion that I have for anyone affected by addiction.
Maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into the surprise visit, but the idea of that, of of addiction, that crime itself is not just some premeditated thing. There are things that just happen in the midst of addiction and desperation, that
Mm-hmm.
even whether you're a bad guy or a bad person or not, there's no, can you talk to the fact that there's really no black and white in many ways in the story? If you really, you're talking about compassion, if you really delve into the story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're really, there's not, I don't think there's many circumstances that do show a super black and white um outcome of who's right and who's wrong, especially when you're in the moment. You're under the influence of things, and your life has kind of just built you up to this point. And it's it makes you really do look at the world differently and say, maybe these people in jail aren't inherently bad people. Maybe they were in the wrong situation at the wrong time and weren't necessarily given the tools to know how to react in a different way. Which doesn't make it okay. It just makes it more forgivable and can put us on a track to better heal ourselves and the people that we call victims.
Just on a movie, I'm a huge movie buff, and me being 50, I grew up on Eric Roberts movies back in the 80s, 90s. He was a leading man. He was the Pope of Greenwich Village, the man. Just, I'm sure you're a couple of generations removed, but I'm not saying you're an idiot, okay, or you're not naive, but just wondering, did you have an idea of who you were acting across from, and did you do your research on this stuff, or maybe your folks told you about Robert? And what is it like just having that kind of energy with such a real vet actor?
Yeah, I mean, my dad is definitely someone who's an older movie buff. He is in his 60s and he loves old westerns, but Die Hard, any of the kind of that genre generation he knows. So, and he doesn't know much, I think, about the pop culture. I do know he knows, he's just not as into it. So when I said Eric Roberts and his eyes kind of lit up, he's like, "Oh, wow." So that kind of made me feel like good. Like I was like, wow, like so yeah, I definitely did my research. I didn't try and get too far because I didn't want to get nervous, if that makes sense. I didn't want to psych myself out because um I kind of wanted to put myself at some point, some of a colleague ish, and not just a child next to him. But it's so hard to feel not like a novice because I am, and he's Eric Roberts. But yeah, no, it was amazing being around him. As soon as he walks onto set, like his face is so recognizable and so chiseled, like Eric, like just off the TV screen or movie screen. So it was really awesome being able to just see him in person and see how he works. And he even told some old Hollywood stories, and that was just really fun. So
Yeah, what's it like for you just being as a young actor? You're coming up in the game, and then you have this movie, and then you also have the success of the Fear Street series, and you had such a juicy role in Fear Street Part Two. Now with some time elapsed, what has that been like? Just getting that feedback from fans of the series, and just it must be a really important part in your life as well right now as an actor.
yeah, it's opened so many doors. It's been unreal, honestly, the fan base, just that alone. Because when with these streaming platforms, it's kind of hard to, and with everything being remote, it's kind of hard to get like a tangible grasp on what's real with popularity of things, because things kind of elevate in popularity just on your own interests, if that makes sense. Things pop up that you like. So I don't know if I would kept seeing Fear Street on my feed and my Netflix recommendations just because my friends were watching it or because it was really that popular. But eventually I realized it was really really a popular show, and just the fans that have taken to it and taken to Joan, it's been so wild. And it still doesn't seem real. I'm just kind of like so grateful to be a part of it. And I love the movie so much.
Again, maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much, but was it fun playing a character who you're gonna either love or hate, but she has real agency of who she is? She just, I just love that. The fact that, was that joy for you just to play someone like that? Just,
Yeah, it was. It really was. I had some I definitely had some trepidation or some intimidation with the sex scene, because, there's always that nervousness being on set. But I love the new perspective of in the film industry of women, of it's her choice. She's doing it and taking advantage of that. Like you said, she has agency of who she is, and that really did propel me through it. And she is kind of her own person through the whole entire film, and no one can tell her otherwise. I really do. I love taking advantage of that. So like that nervousness at the beginning is kind of what propelled me into that character.
I think you moved to Los Angeles for a spell for maybe 5, 6 years ago, and you said persistence is a big part of being an actor in this business. Where do you get that strength to keep on pushing forward? Because it just seems like from the outside looking in, seems like a very hard job. But I'm sure movies like Visit and Fear Street Part Two really help bolster some of that confidence.
Yeah, I really do hope that you kind of have to start to find the confidence on your own before you get those things. But it takes a while, and I really don't know where it came from. It has to come from just pure passion, honestly, because like the passion just has to be a little bit more than the fear. Like I still have the fear right there, like, but I just have the passion a little bit more for some reason. So even if I make mistakes, and I or months I wasn't able to pay my rent, I just for some reason was really passionate about the life that I was making for myself, and I like I love being an artist, and I know that I was never really meant to be other things. If I wasn't going to be an actor, I was going to be a painter or something. So, which I am also. So, it's just having passion, I guess.
I just scrolled down your IG feed. It's probably one of the more beautiful IG profiles I've seen.
Oh my
Is
God, thank you.
have you always had that visual eye? Because that just seems really it seems like a really big passion for you as far as composing a shot, the color palette of your photos, etc. It's not just obligatory like a common Joe like me, but has that always been a big part of who you are, that visual sense of things?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a very aesthetic person. I very much so love fashion. I love color palettes, like you say. I love interior design. I love the aesthetics of something that's pleasing to an eye. I'm a sucker for it. So I love when people put passion and thought into it. So like Wes Anderson, if you're familiar with him in directing, he puts so much passion into what things look like. Or Euphoria, the color palettes in there are just stunning in the shots. And I I in the short that I just directed and wrote, I definitely put a lot of thought into the colors and the shots, and yeah, thank you for noticing. That's so sweet.
Now, okay, I also noticed it's obvious you said short that you just directed. How much work do you put into that, especially now everyone is either like me, paranoid and wearing masks and don't even want to talk to people, and then there's other people who are slowly going out into existence. How do you do
Yeah.
a short right in the middle of this? And can you even tell our listeners or viewers what it's about or not?
Yes, I actually just released it. So you can find it through my Instagram on YouTube. But it's called Glitter, and it's an artist song, Patrick Droney, a wonderful artist, and it's a beautiful song. And I actually just did it with one other person. So my friend who had a camera, I'd been wanting to make this short, and I was like, I'm not going to have many other chances to do this. We had zero budget, and I didn't want to get the hassle of all the stuff going on with COVID. I didn't want to put anyone at risk. So I was like, let's just see what we can do. It's like just the two of us. It's just going to be me in it. We ended up cutting a lot of stuff and changing it. But I think it worked out for the best, and I'm so proud of it. We actually got into a film festival, and just one so far. Haven't heard back. We have like a year. There's a long waiting process, but yeah. So we just did very skeleton crew and went for it.
So maybe zoom out 5 to 10 years from now, is acting not just going to be a big that canvas? You be putting your fingers in so many different parts of the process? Do you see yourself when you call yourself an artist? Where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now? Just dabbling or following so many different disciplines? Is that what you see?
Yeah, I do. I do think so. I never thought that I'd go into the path of directing. I'm already doing so much writing that, um, I'll be blessed to be holding a boom in the back of the shot. Still, if I can still be doing this, I'll be grateful. Um, but yeah, I would love to get behind a camera and really do some big projects and do some meaningful work that just makes my heart sing and hopefully other people's too.
I've interviewed a lot of directors and writers over the years, and some writers will say, "Oh, writing in filmmaking is my favorite part because I don't have to deal with people. It's no compromise. All your imagination is there before you." But then other writers say, "No, I just really hate writing. It's just a means to an end to get to be with people, to get to collaborate our visions together." I'm just wondering what part of that side as a writer do you see yourself in?
I when I did the directing, I loved it so much. It was kind of hypnotic, and the time just flew by, as opposed to acting, where sometimes the hours really drag on because you're waiting on so many other moving parts. You're really just a piece to the puzzle, as in the waiting to be placed, as in the director is putting all the pieces, the puzzle together themselves. And I like having a little bit of that control when it is something that's my image, because I'm have very specific images and I see everything and I kind of want to have that control to do it. But I don't mind bouncing back and forth between different roles. If I'm passionate about a story, I want to be able to have enough humility and understanding of the story to be able to take a step back and say, what should I be doing that tells the story the best? So if that means that someone else needs to direct or different writers need to come on, then I'm all for that. I just want to tell the story the best way it can be told.
Jacqui, for podcast listeners, can you recommend one of your all-time favorite films, and what is it about this specific film that still resonates with you today? And yeah, I'm thinking you might even pick some kind of Wes Anderson film just right off the top. But anyways, but your
Oh
your
my
choice. But yeah,
gosh. Um, wow. I'm gonna do two, and I'm gonna go for one more popular one that's been one for a long time and a more recent one. Um, I would say Interstellar is one of my all time favorite movies. Um, I love the play with time and space, and um, I love how attentive you have to be when you watch it and how present it really makes you, and the soundtrack is stunning. And then for a newer one, I'm going to go for this movie that I recently saw called The Alpinist, and it's a documentary series, or not series, documentary that was done by the same people of Free Solo. And that is also just living in the present without needing to be recognized for what you're doing, because you're doing what you're doing because you love it and for no other reason.
I love that documentary. But I told our listeners there's a big barrier to entry because it really depends on how you look at life. Are you going to live
Mm.
life to the fullest, knowing that tomorrow is never guaranteed, whether you're 1 or 80? Can you speak to that
Oh
theme? Is
my
it something that you?
gosh.
Oh,
It
it's
tears
such a
you up,
yeah.
that movie. It tears you up. And I totally feel you. You're left like, oh, well, stupid. You wouldn't act like that if you really loved life. And then another part's like, wow, he really did love life. So I bounce back and forth. I definitely take a lot more rest and I'm easier on myself lately. And I think that there's something to not needing to do everything every single second, um, but just enjoying your life in the peaceful, quiet moments and trying to enjoy that and not fill it with the need to always better yourself. Maybe I can just be okay with how I am right now. Maybe, or I could try.
I love LA. I'm an LA guy. Okay, but I don't mind when people bash LA. And I'm not saying you're gonna bash it, but is there an advantage to not? Everyone says LA is an industry town. You gotta live right in the center of things. That's where things happen. But is there a sense that, well, you don't really have to do that? You can actually live a little bit outside of town, maybe in another state. It's not imperative. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I do love LA. I can't be there 24/7 because it does make me a little bit too focused on things that aren't important for my career, as I've found out. Um, and it's kind of harder to go into your cave as an artist and not be seen and kind of regenerate yourself. It's harder in LA. Um, so I would say that a mix between the two. It was super crucial for me to be there at the beginning of my career, at least for me, because it put me in. And whenever I'm in LA, I always take advantage of the community that I have created for myself there, of calling someone and say, "Hey, you want to try and like make a cool song with this or something?" Or, "Hey, you want to film this and or take some photos?" And talking to all people of different creative aspects because they all live in the hub of LA, and that's super crucial and important. But there is something to just drawing your own path and not worrying about the city life and what everyone's up to and what you're wearing and what you look like. There's It's just not as important. Or going to a party and saying, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Well, I haven't done anything for 6 months." But you try and make something up to feel good about yourself. So you just have to have a balance. And right now, you don't necessarily need to be in LA because everything is remote. So that's something beautiful that's happening right now. But if you feel like it would help you really kickstart your career and really make some connections and friends that you can create with, then that's something to not take for granted.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And also, as an audio person, props, you are one of the 1% of quote unquote talent who actually uses their own mic. So props on that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. What a great interview. Thank you.